Hello, everyone. I hope that everyone is having a great evening so far. My name is Jaelyn Cooper, and I'm 29 years old, and I'm very grateful to be able to come before you today virtually. I'm excited to share my presentation, Living Beyond Rare, my journey with cystic fibrosis, Defying Limits with a Unique Perspective. Living with cystic fibrosis has never just been about navigating a rare disease. It's also been about navigating the world as someone who hasn't always been reflected in this space. I've often felt like I exist in a space where I'm a rare within rare. Um, that feeling has also brought up internal challenges for me, but it's also shaped a deep sense of resilience, purpose, responsibility, and most of all, perspective. And with that said, I want to take you through my journey, not just with the medical milestones, but also with the human moments within those and the reality of growing up with CF, learning how to advocate for myself, and also holding on to hope while carving out a future. And for many of us with CF, for those that know, the future can feel and be very uncertain. And so, therefore, thank you for allowing me to share this part of my story with you. And continue to the next slide. Thank you. To start, I had, of course, all the symptoms of CF, the constant coughing, the poor weight gain, malnutrition, and of course, trouble breathing, and of course, the salty skin. But despite all of that, I wasn't tested for CF right away. Instead, I went through test after test, diagnosis after diagnosis, while my symptoms got continued to get worse. The truth is that I was overlooked because of how I look. During that time, CF was still widely known as a white person's disease, and so no one thought to consider me for to test for CF. However, that delay could have very well changed the course of everything, and honestly, it could have cost me my life. But thankfully, my mom, she trusted her intuition and she didn't take no for an answer. She pushed for a second opinion and she found a doctor who said to make them test her for cystic fibrosis. And that's exactly what she did. And so eventually, finally, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 18 months old. And while we were grateful that they eventually figured it out, we can't help but to wonder how things may have been different. And if someone had just looked at me and just seen the possibility and not just the stereotype beyond skin color. Unfortunately, my story isn't unique. There are many other people with CF, children and adults who of color who have been misdiagnosed or dismissed. And while it is getting better and we've made great progress, there's still a lot more work to do. And that's why I want to tell my part of my story, because awareness, of course, is life changing. Next slide, please. So, some things that I was going through growing up, I just remembered that there were many days where I just felt simply tired, just physically, mentally, and emotionally. Keeping up with just constant treatments, medications, doctor's appointments, and just the roller coaster of my health alone, just being up and down, and just knowing that it was never going to stop, was just exhausting in and of itself. And even when I looked fine on the outside, I was carrying so much inside just to make it through a regular day a lot of the time. And there were also many days where it just really wore me down, but I didn't have the words always to express it. On top of that, I didn't know anyone else who looked like me who was also going through a similar experience as me for a long while. It's already hard enough to build close relationships when you can't be around others who also have CF. Obviously, because of the risks that come with the disease, and it made me feel the loneliness even deeper. I have this rare disease, and being also a black girl with CF made it also feel like I was living a version that no one else really talked about. The classic question that everyone asks at some point in their life is often, why me? I try to be strong because that's what people expected of me, and they also told me that I was strong, so therefore I always felt like I had to be. And they thought that I was handling it, but inside there were many days where I felt very overwhelmed, of course. I didn't always want to be the sick one. I just wanted just space to just be a kid and also just to be normal. However, instead, I had to learn how to grow up fast and to manage something that most people don't even see or understand or have even heard of. It took me a long time to find those words for what I was feeling. However, over time, I realized that part of my strength came from learning how to live through all of that, and to still be myself and to find myself and what it was that made me want to continue to fight. I struggled with how I saw myself, and for a while, I felt insecure about my body, about my future, and sometimes I was just always, of course, just tired of feeling like the sick one. It's a lot to carry from a young age, especially when most people around you don't fully understand what it is that you're going through. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when I was younger and in the hospital, there were many times when I felt like I was being looked at more than just being cared for. A lot of the doctors and the medical staff were surprised to see a black patient with cystic fibrosis. Some had stated that they had never seen it before, and it was very apparent either through their looks or their expressions, um, or just because they simply just stated it. And that alone made the experience feel more isolating. And also, there were times where I felt as a spectacle in a way. I can recall a time when there were several doctors that came into my room, my hospital room, literally just to see me. I didn't know what was going on at first, and they weren't there just to treat me, or to talk about how I was feeling. They were simply there just to see who I was and who was this person that was black with CF. It was very overwhelming, and it made me feel like I was on display, like a teaching tool, and sometimes instead of a person. And a lot of times I felt like a case study, and I was just really tired and of course really sick, and I never really I now realize that this was another thing that I was going to have to deal with just the stairs alone. Navigating my vulnerability was already very hard for me, and even still to this day I'm still pushing past that. And within this healthcare space where your body is exposed a lot and your dignity is tested, um, in a lot of these instances, because you're relying on everyone, including not just the people you know, but also the people you don't know, um, to care for you. However, when you add the layer of being visibly different, racially and culturally, especially in how your condition presents, it can feel like your humanity can be overlooked. And this is why it's so important to remind ourselves and others that every patient is a whole person, and we are not that people we are not people that are just data points or diagnostic challenges. We have stories, feelings, fears, and identities that deserve to be acknowledged in the room. Therefore, that kind of respect, sensitivity, and presence can make all the difference in healing. Next slide, please. So, as many of you may know, cystic fibrosis can already feel like a very lonely diagnosis. From a young age, you're told that you can't be around other people with CF, so there's no touching, there's no sharing spaces. Also, keeping a safe distance in order to avoid cross contamination. So even though we all share this condition, we are living apart constantly, which is hard to understand as a child. Um, why someone who knows exactly what you're going through still can't be near you. Um, but what made that even harder for me specifically was being different in another way as well, being just one of the few black people that I knew of with cystic fibrosis. I didn't always see myself in pamphlets or the research or even in the waiting rooms. The lack of representation made me feel like an outsider in a space where I was already set apart. It made me pull back emotionally and be less vulnerable. And I didn't really want to try to connect with others in the CF community because I felt like, honestly, what was the point? I already couldn't be near them physically, and now I wasn't even sure that we could relate. And that kind of emotional distance does start to add up over time. And I carried this quiet weight of being different, not just from others with CF, but also sometimes within my own community. It felt like no one ever really fully understood, and that made me feel isolated in a way that went far beyond the illness itself. However, over time, I was encouraged by close people around me to reach out anyway and to find those connections in a new way. And thankfully, with technology advancing, I was able to find other people and connect with others my age, also within the CF community, and some who even looked like me. And I got to hear their stories and they got to hear mine. And that mutual recognition, that feeling of I see you and I understand you, it helped me begin to heal. And in those moments of visibility, I found strength, not just for myself, but also for others like me who are still waiting to see themselves reflected. And that's why I continue to speak out, because no one should ever feel alone as I once did. Next slide, please. Let's see. So there was another experience that really stuck with my family. There was a medical professional that actually questioned whether my father was actually my real father. It wasn't just an offhand comment. They seriously doubted that two black parents could have a child with cystic fibrosis. Um, and it was honestly very disrespectful and it was absurd. That the assumption that the CF being a white disease led them to question something as personal as our family dynamic. At that time, my family was already under a lot of stress, trying just understand my diagnosis and just worrying about my health and well being. And then they had to deal with someone questioning something as personal as our identity and our biology. It was hurtful, it was careless, and it was insulting. At that point, it didn't matter who we were because we already had the diagnosis. What mattered was that I was sick and that I needed treatment. And that moment made something very clear to us that we weren't just dealing with this disease, we were also dealing with assumptions that came with it. And that kind of bias can make an already hard situation feel even heavier. And what could have made a difference was, of course, cultural competency training, but as a not just as a foundational part of medical education, but also as everyday care. And these experiences taught me how deeply race and healthcare can intersect. And when assumptions replace listening, it breaks trust. However, when providers are open, informed, and respectful, it builds the kind of care that truly supports the whole person and not just the disease. So, as we think about how to move forward, I think that we should ask ourselves, are we creating a system where every patient feels seen and heard? And are we preparing providers to meet patients where they are, and not just medically, but culturally and emotionally? Because inclusive care doesn't just treat conditions, it acknowledges the people behind them. And that's how we begin to close these cultural gaps in care. Next slide, please. So, over time, I came into my own as I sought out for myself. Before taking Trikafta, which is an amazing modulator that I had the opportunity to be able to take, I was discouraged and exhausted, and I was constantly dealing with fluctuating lung functions, fighting infections, and just managing my other chronic illnesses that came as a result of my CF. And just the nonstop effort that it took just to stay out of the hospital and maintain decent health. There was a heaviness to many days that I had, and I tried to stay hopeful and be, but a lot of times my world just felt small. And I often wondered if I'd ever catch a real breath, both literally and figuratively, without worry. Once I started Trikafta, I felt like a huge fog was lifted. For the first time, I knew what it felt like to breathe deeply, and like my lungs were really finally working the way that they were meant to. It didn't just improve my numbers, but it improved me personally. My energy started to increase more, and I started dreaming differently, and I started going after life with a new mindset. The fight didn't feel as hard anymore, and life became more manageable. I felt like I was going to live longer, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a little bit more normal. My fear and self doubt began to fade, and in their place came hope and confidence. I felt like I could do more and that I could be more. I don't take that feeling for granted, and I genuinely hope that everyone with CF will soon have access to a modulator, even if it only helps by 10%, because that 10% can make a world of difference. Trikafta didn't just give me better health, but it gave me more time and it gave me more hope and it gave me more possibility. This is why research and innovation in cystic fibrosis matters so much, and it's why we have to keep going so that everyone living with cystic fibrosis can one day have this kind of experience and so that more lives can be changed for the better. Next slide, please. Once I had my health in a little bit more of a stable place, the doors started opening for me. Doors that I didn't realize that I had shut myself off to. I returned to school and I started planning more for the future, not just trying to survive the day, but I got to travel more and I reconnected with my passions and began envisioning a life beyond my diagnosis. Trikafta gave me the chance to ask myself in a new way, what do I want to do with this life? And the answer is I want to make an impact, I want to lead with purpose, serve with compassion, and inspire others to believe that their story isn't over, even when it looks different than they imagine. And I especially want to be a voice for people who feel overlooked and underestimated because hope is real, healing is possible, and your life can evolve beautiful in unexpected ways. And I don't take a single breath for granted. Every one of them is a gift, and I'm using them to build something meaningful, something that reaches beyond me, and something that lasts. Next slide, please. Well, so CF is a part of me, but it's not all of me. I'm a daughter, a sister, a roller skater, a music lover, a traveler, and an navigator. I love discovering new places, learning new things, and connecting with other people from all walks of life. I graduated in 2022 with a Master's of Healthcare Administration, and I'm committed to using my career to make a real impact and using my work that is centered around advocacy, access, and equity because I know what it feels like to be overlooked in a system that always wasn't built with people like me in mind. I've had the opportunity to lead projects that brought health education and resources to underserved neighborhoods, and I've been able to help shape policy recommendations, challenge outdated systems, and work to create better experiences for patients who are going through hardships. My journey with cystic fibrosis has shown me the gaps and the possibilities within our healthcare system, and I've experienced what it's like to be dismissed and to not feel represented, and to have to advocate for my own care. But those challenges didn't stop me, and they became fuel for my purpose. I've learned to find joy in little moments, to lead with compassion, and to use my voice to uplift others. And I don't just get through life, I live it fully with intention and passion. And at the heart of everything I do for my communities and a belief in the power of lived experiences. By sharing my own, I hope to open doors for others and challenge what's normal within healthcare and remind people that we are so much more than our diagnosis. We are powerful, we are worthy, and we are not alone. I know what it's like to sit in a hospital room and feel invisible and seen at all at the same time, to have my symptoms dismissed, or to not see anyone who looks like me in research in the room. And that kind of isolation does stay with you. I believe that healthcare should truly be for everyone, not just in theory, but in action. That means that care that goes beyond check boxes and symptoms, and it's care that sees the whole person, which includes your culture, your background, your lived experiences, and responds with dignity, understanding, and meaningful solutions. And that's why this work is so personal. And it's not just about fixing broken systems. It's about making sure that no one feels like they don't belong in their own care journey. And I want to be part of that change from the inside out. And I want to shape policies, improve systems, and make sure that equity isn't just a buzzword. Next slide, please. So, when I think about the future of cystic fibrosis care, I think about healing, not just through medicine, but also through understanding and inclusion. I pray every day that a cure is within reach and that it's not far, and not just for me, but also for every single person living with CF. I hold on to that hope tightly because it means freedom, it means breath without fear, and it means life without limits. But until that cure comes, there is still much more work to do. We need a future where no one is overlooked because of their color of their skin, their culture, or their zip code that they live in. I look forward to seeing more diverse participation in research, more culturally competent care in healthcare settings, and more listening to patient voices from all backgrounds and acted upon. And I want to see patient voices from all walks of life, not just heard, and continued to be valued. CF doesn't look the same on everyone, and it shouldn't be treated as if it does, nor should any illness. True progress will come when care is equitable and when awareness is inclusive and when systems are built to support the full spectrum of people living with this disease. I believe that the future is possible, and I'm committed to being part of that movement that gets us there. Next slide, please. I am not just living with CF, I'm thriving in spite of it. This statement is more than just a sentence to me because it's the truth that I fought for each day. CF didn't stop me from earning degrees, seeing the world, dreaming big, or becoming the woman that I am today. It challenged me absolutely, but it also shaped me into someone resilient, reflective, and relentless to justice, joy, and possibility. I may have a rare disease, but I'm not a tragedy. I'm a testimony. Testimony. And I hope that by sharing my journey, someone out there feels a little bit more empowered to live their own story out loud. My voice is my advocacy and my journey which has many moments full of pain, growth, and perseverance has become my power. I've learned how to take setbacks and turn them into strength, and now I use that strength to speak up, show up, and stand up for others in need. Next slide, please. My journey with CF has never been just about managing this disease. It's also been about navigating a system that often wasn't built for patients who look like me. And that's why advocacy has become such a personal mission. I advocate for patients who are underrepresented and those whose symptoms are dismissed and whose diagnoses are delayed and whose voices are ignored in certain moments. No one should have to fight twice, once for their health and again to be believed. Fighting for equitable treatment means pushing for systems that see the whole patient and that includes race, background, and lived experiences. And because CF and healthcare as a whole should not be one size fits all. Oftentimes, it has left me feeling frustrated, sometimes defeated, and deeply tired. And the truth is, I started to expect it, but over time, I realized the issue wasn't me, and the problem was the system. And so, therefore, we need to work together in order to fix the system. I got used to navigating the system that didn't expect to see me, and it was disheartening at times. However, I kept showing up, not because it was easy, but because I knew I deserved to be seen and heard and cared for like anyone else. And in order to do this, I realized that with every obstacle in life is an opportunity to improve my circumstances. And this meant that I just have to be relentless until I couldn't anymore. And I remind myself that on the other side of difficulty is my biggest breakthrough. So every time when things for me get hard, I just say to myself that my breakthrough is coming. Bias doesn't always come in loud or obvious ways. Sometimes it's who's believed, who's heard, and who's taken seriously. And sometimes it's very subtle. Also, as a black woman living with a rare disease, there were times I felt like fading into the background, present but unseen. When my family received my diagnosis, they were afraid, but and also confused. Um, they had never heard of cystic fibrosis, and at the time, statistics weren't the greatest, and they showed that there wasn't a long life expectancy. Imagine being a parent and hearing that your baby might not make it past high school. But my mom, she didn't accept that. She became my fiercest advocate, and she dove into research and learned everything she could about CF and fought to make sure that I had the best care possible, even when the system didn't make it easy. From the late nights of me being up, coughing, or in distress and sick, the endless prayers, to traveling to conferences, spending money that we didn't always have, and making sacrifices without hesitation. You poured your whole heart into giving me a chance at life. So thank you, Mama. My family never let statistics define me, and instead they let their faith and their strength guide me. Every hospital stay, every setback, and every scary moment, they were there upholding me. And I'm standing here today because of their unwavering dedication, because of their love and advocacy that carried me when I couldn't carry myself. Next slide, please. So, as someone living at the intersection of being rare within rare, I don't share my story for sympathy. I share it to spark awareness, compassion, and change. And this journey with cystic fibrosis has been anything but easy, but it's also been filled with purpose, resilience, and unexpected strength. Living with CF as a woman of color has shaped not only how I see the world, but how I move through it. With hope, with intention, and with a deep belief that our stories have the power to create meaningful change. I hope that my experience serves as a reminder that every patient is more than a diagnosis, that we are individuals with dreams, cultures, communities, and voices who should be seen and heard. So, whether you're a researcher, a healthcare provider, a family member, a friend, or someone who simply just came to listen, thank you. Your presence matters, and you are part of the change. Thank you for walking this part of my journey with me today, and I'm truly honored and grateful. And please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or reflections.